What are the rules? Lefties, you're going to have to explain the rules to us again. At least once more, because no one understands what they're allowed to talk about. 2 months ago, you would have been removed, deplatformed, algorithmically censored, or just outright banned if you said that there was a deep state cabal, a concerted effort against our democracy to save the election for Biden. If you made the claim at all that there was a skewed effort by anyone behind the curtains, moving in secret with deep money, deep pockets, against the president and against the American people to save the Democrat vote and to preserve our democracy, even though it's not democratic when they're doing this, then you would have been removed. You would have been deplatformed yourself, taken right out. Instead, now that the temperature has come down a little bit, they think, hey, not only did we get away with it, but we don't want to just get away with it in secret. We want the people to know what we've done. So they're telling you in time. They say, a weird thing happened right after the November 3rd election. Nothing. The nation was braced for chaos. Liberal groups had vowed to take to the streets, planning for hundreds of protests across the country, and right-wing militias were girding for battle. In a poll before Election Day, 75% of Americans had voiced concern about violence. People all knew there were going to be riots. When Trump won re-election, there would be riots. We all knew it, and they boarded up D.C. for that reason. But then what happened? They say nothing. Instead, an eerie quiet descended. As President Trump refused to concede, the response was not mass action, but crickets. When media organizations called the race for Joe Biden on November 7th, jubilation broke out instead. Oh, weird. So they're openly admitting now the people that 75% of Americans were concerned about violence from, well, then when Biden won, they were all celebrating. They're openly admitting that their people are the violent ones. They broke out in jubilation as people thronged cities across the U.S. to celebrate the democratic process that resulted in Trump's ouster. Okay, so you can never call him a dictator again. You can never say Trump was a dictator because he lost an election, you're saying. Dictators don't do that. They say a second odd thing happened amid Trump's attempts to reverse the result. Corporate America turned on him. Yeah, go figure. Not just corporate America either, but Pence and any establishment rhino that had safely secured their own re-election. Okay, no, that we're all good here. We're good locally. You guys are gonna. You want me to go defend Trump? Okay. Where's that knife? Where's that knife I had? Planting it right in his back, and we all saw it happen, and everyone knows it. To quote the man himself. Okay, so he says. They continue. Hundreds of major business leaders, many of whom had backed Trump's candidacy and supported his policies, benefited from all of those policies, called on him to concede. Hey, give up. Hey, we're publicly telling you now we no longer have your back. Just when you need it. Just when you need us to say, okay, we're at the precipice. Now what? They go, shove him off. It's easier. Just throw him over the edge. We don't need to have his back. Remember that when you spend your next dollar at any company. Seriously, you think it doesn't matter what gas station you go to locally or what grocery market you use? It was all very, very strange, Trump said on December 2nd. Within days after the election, we witnessed an orchestrated effort to anoint the winner, even while many key states were still being counted, unquote. And they say, in a way, Trump was right. Because that is exactly what it was. Now they're going to tell you there's more context that makes it not quite correct, as they would always do. But they can't outright deny what he said, because that's the whole point that they're making, is that there was a concerted effort. They did anoint Joe Biden the winner on November 7th, even when other states had not really yet been called. They called them anyways. We're calling it. Sir, he's still alive. He's on the table. He's breathing. He's reaching up. Call it. Time of death, November 7th. There was a conspiracy unfolding behind the scenes, one that both curtailed the protests and coordinated the resistance from CEOs. Okay, so you're stopping the protests, no more violence, no Antifa, no BLM, no rioting, no looting. The businesses must have said, hey, that stuff long-term hurts us, because that's our stuff they're looting. How many Walmarts do you think would have been looted around the country? In particular, in the lefty zones in major cities, in these secondary cities. So like you think about the Walmarts around Detroit, Kroger in Detroit, Meijer in Detroit. But then also you have to think about it happening in Lansing and probably some in Grand Rapids, because there's enough people in those major markets that you could get a nice little mob going. So those businesses are more than likely saying, okay, look, we can do kind of two things at once here. We've threatened all the riots, and 75% of Americans expect it. Well, what if we just told everyone, hey, call it off, no rioting. We'll just say Joe Biden won. Then it kind of doesn't matter. All the other, we can have our buddies in the courts just not take the cases. Therefore, there can't be a result to overturn, right? Which is exactly what we saw happen. So if you're going to say I'm a conspiracy guy, fine, but you have to now explain your position a little bit better than I'm doing this one, okay? They say, in a way, Trump was right. There was a conspiracy unfolding. It was curtailing the protests, and it did coordinate the resistance of those CEOs. They say both surprises were the result of an informal alliance between the left-wing activists and business titans. So anyone that's saying eat the rich, I think you're just starting a little softer than eating. I think you're just giving them a taste. They're certainly in your mouth, but I don't think you're, well, I guess you could be swallowing. Let us know, lefties, in the comments below. What exactly happened here on that fateful night? The pact was formalized in a terse, little-noticed joint statement of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the AFL-CIO, published on Election Day. Both sides would come to see it as sort of an implicit bargain, inspired by the summer's massive, sometimes destructive, racial justice protests, in which the forces of labor come together with the forces of capital, das Kapital, to keep the peace and oppose Trump's assault? What? How is it that the communists get away with the mental gymnastics of thinking, hey, we're supposed to be fighting the capitalists and seizing the means of production because we are the labor, we're the proletariat. We need to rise up and usurp the bourgeoisie. Except in this case, we're going to join up with them because this guy in the middle here who says he's fighting for you and they're actually against you and all that stuff, well, just this once, we're not going to listen to him. The one person saying that he's finally got a grip and that he could take that out, all he needs is your help. No, we're not going to give that to him. We're going to join up with our enemy and defeat this other guy. Why? Oh, because the TV box said so. And yes, they are that stupid. They say the handshake between business and labor was just one component of the vast cross-partisan campaign, right? Like I said earlier, you can bet that courts are involved here. It's not just business, but those businesses pay for people. They give money. Those people have donations. Those donations are then impacting court decisions. So I got a major case coming up if I'm Amazon. Which judges are running foundations that I can grease? Hey, those judges didn't take the case because someone asked them not to. Why? Well, because I've been paying them for 20 years. And that's Jeff Bezos. They say the handshake, it's only one component of the vast cross-partisan campaign to protect the election. It's protecting the election if we can make sure that it's not the way that most people would assume it to go. An extraordinary shadow effort dedicated not to winning the vote, but to ensuring it would be free and fair and credible and uncorrupted. Free, fair, credible, and uncorrupted. The video from Georgia, the ballots coming out from under the table. Free, fair, credible, uncorrupted, they said. The hiding all of the votes being counted and tabulated in Detroit, putting up these massive, well, I guess they're not giant. I mean, they could look like giant checks. But they're holding up giant pieces of cardboard against the wall, against the windows, so that you can't see in. Uncorrupted? Free, fair, credible? No. In what world does someone on the left read this and go, yes, this is normal. This is good. This is real. This protects our democracy. I think they need to go and learn what a democracy is and what a democratic republic is. Just do some reading. It says, for more than a year, a loosely organized coalition of operatives scrambled to shore up America's institutions as they came under simultaneous attack from a remorseless pandemic and an autocratically inclined president. So take out their bias They're just saying, okay, all of the big, well-known institutions, the corporates, the banks, the this, the that, the money bugs, all the money bugs, all of them just swarmed and hived together to attack the president. And you know that you're admitting then, you're saying they're also attacking half the country, because you're not going to say half the country doesn't support Trump, right? So you're celebrating that all of America's institutions came together to institutionally discriminate against half of the country politically. Great job. Great work, lefties. You win. This round, you win a battle. You don't win the war. They say, though much of the activity took place on the left, it was separated from the Biden campaign and crossed ideological lines. Oh, thank God Biden's campaign wasn't directly involved. Whew, thought he might be impeached. The scenario the shadow campaigners were desperate to stop was not a Trump victory. It was an election so calamitous that no result could be discerned at all. A failure of the central act of a democratic self-governance that has been the hallmark of America since its founding. Their work touches every aspect of the election. They got states to change voting systems and laws and help secure hundreds of millions in public and private funding. They fended off voter suppression lawsuits, recruited armies of poll workers, and got millions of people to vote by mail for the first time. They successfully pressured social media companies to take a harder line against disinformation and used data-driven strategies to fight viral smears. Data-driven strategies like censoring anything to do with Hunter Biden's laptop right before the election. Any New York Post article, the New York Post themselves not allowed to post on Twitter until they remove their article. Censor yourselves so that we don't have to. Otherwise, you're censored. And if you claim that as a conservative, you'll be banned, because we already all know that if you are a conservative, you're not being censored. That's misinformation. And one of the rules is you can't spread misinformation. You'll be banned. We're past idiocracy. That would have been the nice future. We're not going that way. We're going into like the Terminator future. They say the untold story of the election is that thousands of people of both parties who accomplished the triumph of American democracy at its very foundation, said Norm Eisen, a prominent lawyer and former Obama administration official who recruited Republicans and Democrats alike to the board of the Voter Protection Program. They say after Election Day, they monitor every pressure point to ensure that Trump will not overturn the election. They will not allow anyone to spread Trump's theories or claims of any kind of fraud. God forbid, the data-driven strategies fail and people figure out that there was any actual fraud. So don't let them talk about it. We won't let Trump speak any longer. We'll kick him right off of Twitter and Facebook, and he won't have a voice any longer. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me that that's not what exactly is happening right now. They say, for Trump and his allies, we're running their own campaign to spoil the election. Oh, really? So they're saying, well, we were doing, some shady dealing, but we were doing it with good intent. He was a bad person. It's like you're writing this article and then you get this far into it and you realize, man, I better make sure that people don't start reading this in a negative light. I better start making sure, we refer to Trump as really the worst of the bad guys. For Trump and his allies were running their own campaign to spoil the election. We're Superman over here. The president spent months insisting the mail ballots were a Democratic plot and the election would be rigged. True. His henchmen at the state level sought to block their use, while his lawyers brought dozens of spurious lawsuits to make it more difficult to vote, an intensification of the GOP's legacy of suppressive tactics. Asking for an ID, making sure you're a citizen, making sure you're legally allowed to vote, is not a suppressive tactic. If you drove to the polling booth, or if you are an adult in the United States, you have an ID. If you don't vote. And if you think that's suppressive, fine, don't vote. I think your ideas are stupid. There. That's an intensification. Go figure. He spent months following the November 3rd election trying to steal it back because he'd lost. Is this even news anymore? Time, is this news? Stealing it back with lawsuits and conspiracy theories, pressuring state and local officials into auditing the vote. My parents are pressuring my teacher to grade my test. I would just prefer they say I passed. Does this make any sense to anyone? The democracy campaigners watched with alarm. Every week we felt like we were in a struggle to pull this off without the country going through a dangerous moment of unraveling. Really? What are you trying to pull off? Republican Zach Wamp? Former GOP. A Trump supporter who helped coordinate a bipartisan election protection council. We can look back and say this thing went pretty well, but it's not clear. But it was not all clear in September and October that was going to be the case. Right? They thought they were going to lose. This is it, though. This is the big piece, because I know this is getting a little long. This is the big one right here. And then you can read all about this yourself. They say, it's massively important for the country to understand that it didn't happen accidentally. The system didn't work magically. Democracy is not self-executing. That's why the participants want the secret history of the 2020 election told. Even though it sounds like paranoid fever dreams, a well-funded cabal of powerful people ranging across the industries and ideologies working together behind the scenes to influence perceptions, change rules and laws, steer the media coverage, and control the flow of information. They weren't rigging the election, though. They were just fortifying it. And they believe the public needs to understand the system's fragility in order to ensure that democracy in America continues. If this is their idea of democracy, I don't want it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like this video, share this video with someone who is not yet aware of this as being proven and the fact that time is rubbing your face in it, like your little brother in a snow washout. And then subscribe to the channel on Odyssey, BitChute, Rumble, YouTube, Gab. Do everything else that you can do to keep America afloat.